Hello and welcome to the unofficial Unreal Engine podcast, where we talk about all things Unreal Engine and also teeth that feel nothing. We're your hosts. My name's Alex, and next to me, returning from a long stint of journeys, is
Yes, Jacob. Well,
yeah,
I'm happy to be back here chatting with you. We got a lot to talk about since we haven't spoken since 2023.
yeah.
That's
It's been a month. There's plenty to catch up on. How was your holidays, and how's everything been for you in 2024 so far, Jacob?
well, it's been busy. But before I answer your question, I got to say, if you know, for those who are listening, who have listened, even up till now, look, if you made it 1 minute in, all right, consider liking, subscribing, rating, whatever it is, wherever you're at. We really appreciate it. But to get to your point, I had a wonderful holiday, mostly relaxing, and then it was right back into the thick of it. I just got back from Seattle this last week.
Ooh.
Um, it was my first time in Seattle, actually.
I'm jealous. I've always wanted to go to Seattle. Haven't been there yet.
Yeah,
Tell me about it.
my initial impressions are one, I think the Space Needle is a hoax because I was there for 3 days. I went downtown. I got around a little bit. Didn't see a Space Needle once, so I think that's just fake, straight up. That's like how they put it on the postcard so people show up. Uh,
That's right.
and then the second one is that if you go down to the like fish market where supposedly they throw fish, I didn't see a single fish thrown. Okay, so overall,
Huge disappointment.
really losing points for me for that. But otherwise, it's a cool place. I mean, went to this is a little cliche, and for the coffee snobs out there, they might be a little insulted, but I went to the first Starbucks in Seattle, and it was quite fun. It was one of the reserves. It wasn't too crazy, but it was a good time, and we walked out of there totally buzzed, and then ran around Seattle for an hour and enjoyed ourselves thoroughly. So yeah, overall pretty good, pretty rainy. Weather was crazy, and now I'm back and ready to chat about some of the very fun stuff that happened while I was gone.
Yeah. Cool. Big thing for me this month was January 2nd, like right as my kids were going back to school. I had to run over to JFK to fly out to Phoenix, Arizona, and then head to the Arizona State University campus for a very cool event called Worlds in Play, which I was frankly like a little bitter about at the beginning. Like my friend Scarlett Kim and Jacob Penroser, I think Penholster we're hosting, and it was this inaugural event that's supposed to be like this big merging of people from games and theater and tech and XR and all that. But it was like, man, this is too early in the year. Like, I don't want to think. And then the event wasn't just like this passive, like, let's sit down and listen to some cool people talk. It was all like super interactive. Like, you are building things and making things and participating in LARPs and, all these things that were like very, very active. I did like a Lego building session and
That's cool.
invented a game about like bringing up memories with decks of cards where every card you play is a different year in your life, and you share all these things, and then that evolved into a way to like create new characters and new worlds in a fantasy setting. But suffice to say, I was very happy by the end of it that I went, and it was just an incredibly invigorating, creative way to start off the new year. And I feel like I got to spend a lot of time convincing people that Unreal Engine, in particular, is not that intimidating, and they are brilliant, creative people who should not be too afraid of this kind of new technology. And I hope I got a few of them excited about the ways they could start to implement all of their awesome ideas using the latest digital tools.
Yeah, very cool. That sounds actually quite productive.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. And I hope they do it again. So if anyone wants to keep tabs on that event, it was called Worlds in Play. And I hope it happens every year, forever and ever.
Yeah, pretty cool. So, what was your holiday like? You have a good holiday, Alex?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a little more relaxing. The holidays are usually when I'm like really busy in the thick of things during the year, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could just like relax and play a video game.
Yeah,
Very complicated thing to arrange. I'm usually telling myself like December, December over the holiday break, like I'll
yeah,
sit down and like box out, 6 hours or whatever to play a video game, and that didn't really happen. I was working hard to find time to play some video games, and I ended up playing probably the most, Death Stranding
oh,
and
interesting.
Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, both of which have been sitting in my Steam library for a very long time. And I made some progress, and they both kind of clicked with me in a way that they didn't when I first started playing them. But I definitely wouldn't say I had a relaxing holiday. It was very busy jumping around to family in New Hampshire and Vermont. And then there were still like other projects that were ongoing because Christmas Carol took up so much time that I
Yeah.
had neglected other things. And, then there's just things like I have a bunch of receipts from trips and stuff like that going back to Unreal Fest in October that need to be like figured out.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Tax
there was,
season.
a lot of things bouncing around. Oh, also very complicated on Christmas Eve. My wife and I actually took on I should say surprisingly complicated task. We should have known this would be complicated, to give our youngest son his own bedroom, because both our kids have been sharing a bedroom their whole lives, and they're like starting to butt heads more. And we're like, we can go live in a different part of the house and give our bedroom to our youngest son. And so while he was sleeping, we like tried to like move everything into this other room, move all of our other stuff out, give him like fresh sheets, and make it all Christmassy. And it was fun. But then it was like 4 a.m. in the morning, and it's like we need to go to bed. So that was a trip.
Did you pull it off though? Like,
We did. Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, he got to wake up in his new room and be like, "Did Santa give me a new bedroom?" It's like, "No, no, no. We did that." Let's be clear about who put in all that effort.
Good, yeah. Santa wasn't rearranging the furniture. Yeah, that's probably for
Yeah.
the best, honestly. Well, awesome. Well, okay. What do you want to jump into here, Alex? We got some big topics today.
Yeah, I got a little list of a few things. I mean, we can dive into like, the more bureaucratic things like the ongoing lawsuits with
Yeah.
Epic and Google and Apple and all that stuff. We can jump a little bit more into like the Apple Vision Pro, which I know we've both been spending a lot of time thinking about. There's some fun events I want to draw some people's attention to. And yeah, and just some other cool things that it's like, hey, I'm glad these things are happening, and that the dev community is always up to uh, the neat things that they do.
Yeah. Let's do it. All right.
Cool. Well, behind me is a video from the Apple Vision Pro launch that I thought was particularly interesting. Jacob, I'll announce for everyone that you said you started watching it and you found it very cringe, but maybe there might be some benefit in us kind of going through this together and kind of breaking down
Yep.
what they're doing, because I found it fascinating. And why don't before I say too much, why don't we just dive in, and we're just going to kind of talk over it as it plays. If anyone hasn't seen this video, this is kind of Apple's introduction to the Apple Vision Pro, and trying to get people who have never put on this headset before, which right now is 99.9% of the population, a sense of what it is actually like.
Yeah, and we'll link this in the comments, or sorry, the description on YouTube if you need a link to find it.
So behind us right now is a video that's a bit of a guided tour for the Apple Vision Pro, and I thought it might be kind of interesting for us to walk through this. This is a recent video that Apple just released. Jacob, I know you said you thought it was a little bit cringe. I thought there's a lot of fascinating stuff going on in here, so maybe we just kind of talk through it as it plays, and we'll maybe say something insightful. Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? We could have a good thought.
We might have a good thought.
We'll find out. All
Yeah.
right.
And we'll have the link below for anyone who wants to check this out themselves. So what we have is a product manager who's here to tell you about the Apple Vision Pro. We have a nice hero shot of it on a coffee table. And in theory, she's going to show it to a person who's never tried this headset before. Jacob, do you think this is actually someone who's never tried it before, or a fairly skilled actor?
Honestly, it could be both. But probably just a skilled actor. I don't
Yeah,
think
that's
they're
what you think?
legally liable if if that statement is false.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's funny. So what I think is kind of interesting here is they are showing his view quite a bit, and they're showing the fact that as he goes through this, he has certain instincts for how he wants to engage with it. And I like the fact that it's not perfect. There are certain times when he does things in a slightly unexpected way, and she corrects him. And I like that, because it is the kind of way that this might actually happen in a real demo. So he's like finding where the buttons are. So he's figuring out how to press kind of the home button, which is this little crown, which is a lot like the crown you have on the Apple Watch. You see the apps that are playing here. My feed froze. That's okay. And you see the fact that he is trying to express like how it feels to be in the headset. Now, of course, we keep cutting to what he's actually seeing, But I like the fact that, unlike what Magic Leap got into trouble with because of the fact that they were showing a big immersive AR experience when it was actually very small, this is actually very, very close to what it will feel like for people in the headset, because of the fact that it is really a VR headset that has, very
Right.
good pass through, that people are going to be able to look through and feel very much what is going on here. So the way he's pinching. Oh, and here, this is a key moment. I want to pause here for just a second,
Yep. Yep.
because he reaches up to do a pinch to make the screen bigger. And what does she say, Jacob?
She says you don't have to keep your hands in the air. You can put
Yeah,
them.
she
You can put
says
them
you can
down.
rest them comfortably in your lap. This is the main moment that I was like, aha, they're doing something really useful here, because they could just show him doing all the things correct. But this is a really common thing people are going to do, because for anyone who has seen Minority Report or any kind of sci-fi movie with, hand gestures, what are people always doing, Jacob?
Yeah, they're always waving them around and poking in the air, and yeah, but in honesty, that is how most AR devices at least have operated
That's
up
right.
till now. So
Yeah, if you're going to use a MetaQuest Pro with hand tracking, you got to do it like that. HoloLens has you doing everything like way out in front of you. And, it's actually a little exhausting to do that. Like 3 minutes of just holding your arm out to like do gesture things. And you're like, I just want to sit down and do a mouse. So there is something kind of fascinating about the fact that they are really pushing for this kind of put your hands in your lap and just relax kind of modality, because your eyes are the cursor, and that's what's actually going to guide the things that you're clicking on. Like, really all your finger is doing is, it's like the mouse clicker, but the mouse itself is your eyes. So, she tells him to rest your hands comfortably in your lap, and then we'll kind of continue from here. And so then he's like, oh, okay. And now he gets it. And he's still pinching and zooming and really just translating, I think, in a fairly intuitive way, the ways he would interact with an iPhone or an iPad, in a way that I think is frankly better than what, Meta has done to try to explain their headset. The best video of this I saw back in 2016 was actually done by HTC and Valve, when they brought like a family into kind of like a green screen studio and let them play with the Lab, that early demo that came out with the HTC Vive. And again, you're seeing these really organic interactions between regular people trying this out for the first time. And if you're a fairly empathetic human, you're watching the joy and the fun that they're having, and it helps you better understand how it would feel to be doing that yourself.
y-
Because the trickiest thing about any kind of VR, AR, XR, spatial computing is really making people understand what it feels like. So cutting back and forth between his reactions and the product manager here explaining, and his desire to get up and walk around. You can see the battery pack is in his pocket while he's doing this. It's really, I think, doing a nice job of making you feel what it's like to be in device in a very real way.
yeah,
Nothing about here is
I
conceptual.
want to point out also that the examples they're giving here are not flashy. Like
No, not at all.
they're not jumping into anything that is you know like a killer app no, this is just photos, right? Because
Yeah.
I think they understand that probably the first thing someone's going to do is look at just the default apps on their device, and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
form an initial impression very quickly based on that. The other thing to consider is like they're going to have these in Apple stores, and there was some
Mm-hmm.
information that came out about what that process would look like. I don't know if you saw this, Alex, um, about like what the in-store experience was going to be. Uh,
No.
but yeah, it's just worth pointing out that they haven't started with anything flashy yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and they went from like, all those panoramas you've taken, like you're now going to be able to look at those more immersively. And then they're showing spatial video, which I think is harder to get across the sense of here. I really look forward to talking more about spatial video once I'm allowed to, and have the headset on February 2nd. But even little things like this, where it's like I'm watching Apple TV and I am making the screen bigger and dimming the lights around me, just to make it feel more like you're in a movie theater, more immersive. These are really simple, low hanging fruit, simple cognitive ladder kind of stuff that is not complicated for a regular person to understand. So, all the crazier things that are possible with XR and the Vision Pro and all that can come later. But as an introduction to this new world, as it will be for most people, I think this is very straightforward, very clean, very easy to understand. I sent this to like
Yeah.
my dad and my mom and my grandmother, and like they can understand what's going on
I
here,
want to I want to
especially
point
because they've
out
used
real
iPhones.
quick,
Yeah.
Alex, just because it's on the screen. When they
Yes.
came to this table they're sitting at now, he sat down wearing the headset, right?
Yeah.
implying that he didn't have to take it off when moving between spaces. He didn't have to recalibrate it. He just moved, right? Which is also seems pretty risky because most device manufacturers would say, "Oh, well, now it's a liability. We don't recommend you wear this while, in motion." But I guess they're kind of implying that you can keep this thing on, or that like that's the intention. So I just think that's an interesting signal that they gave us there.
Yeah, there is a bit of a deviation here because in the previous videos, and I think even like their press releases, it was like, this is meant to be a seated experience. You are on the couch, you've got the battery pack resting next to you, and it's all meant to be like done from a couch. And here we actually do see him getting up, walking around, moving between spaces, leaving the headset on, and starting to pull up apps. You'll notice he's doing the apps at different places in the room too. He's not doing them all from the same place. So there's also the potential of persistence here where you might pin certain apps.
Yeah.
So, whenever you're doing a FaceTime call, it's always from like this perspective.
I also
Now, yeah,
sorry, this is a quick thing. Is I love like the target audience apartment they're in, which is like probably a $3 million apartment in San Francisco. But yeah. Sorry, as you
the
were.
biggest problem with all things AR and mixed reality is if you want to share what you're doing in it, it's like, oh man, I got to clean my living room.
Yeah.
Like what a nightmare. Whereas VR, it's like it's whatever's the virtual thing.
Yeah.
Now, this part to me did feel a little bit uncanny valley. So we are seeing a persona right now. He's talking to someone where this isn't actually a video of her. This is her avatar, and it looks pretty good. But there's just something about the eyes, something about the way the mouth's
Yep.
moving that to me isn't quite there yet. Also, it's interesting they didn't take the opportunity to show his persona. We know he has one because we're seeing his eyes, but I thought they might have shown a bit of a cut back and forth between the woman who he's talking to's persona and his.
Yeah.
But I think they're worried that when you see a persona next to the actual person, you'll be like, it doesn't quite match them as much. We'll see.
Yeah.
By the way, I heard some rumors that Meta is really pushing on the codec avatars to get them out really fast, probably to compete with Persona. This is a cool moment where, because the Apple Vision Pro is aware of where people are, they want to make it feel like you can be immersed in something but still carry on a conversation, so people can fade into view from the digital content that you're in, and you have the ability to turn up and down the immersiveness, how much of the virtual world versus how much
Yeah.
of the real world you see.
The,
I still don't know how natural it's going to feel to be carrying on a conversation with someone in the headset,
yeah.
but I like the effort they're
This
making.
is one of the things that I and we can get more into this because this is a deeper conversation after we're done with the video here. But thinking about how Apple's peripherals fit into all this, like I always assumed Apple Watch would have a haptic or some sort of a part in this. I recently got new AirPods, and they
Yeah.
have the adaptive audio where if someone starts talking to you or you start talking to someone, it fades out the noise cancellation. This is a very similar angle where I could see these two things working really well together in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of connectiveness between this. Like they've already talked about using AirDrop and things like that between these devices. But I would love my Apple Watch to like vibrate whenever I do a pinch gesture.
Exactly.
I might want one on each hand, which would be kind of weird, like two Apple Watches. I hear people talking about rings all the time and having like haptic rings as a really useful peripheral for this. So everyone has to remember this is the very first version of this. By the way, someone told me, and they didn't substantiate why they thought this, but they told me this Encounter Dinosaurs app was made in Unreal Engine. And if that's true, then there's something weird going on. But
Very
I
odd.
just assumed it was made in Unity or something like that.
Yeah.
So, or Reality
Well,
Kit,
this is
probably.
like
It's
one of the
probably
most
Reality Kit.
classic VR demos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Oculus version of this that came with the Oculus CV1 in Dream Deck. Whenever I'd give someone this demo where a T-Rex like leans down and roars at you and he like kind of spits at you, I'd like throw a little bit of water at people and they'd be like, "What the hell?" It's a great way to just add a little extra immersion. But yeah, it's great to see something come out of a frame and be right there with you. But you'll notice like that's really the only 3D content that they're showing. Everything else
Yeah.
is like a flat screen that is just in your space. So they're keeping it really simple, really straightforward here. We're not seeing games. There is some stuff that I know is coming with Apple TV that I saw myself that I can't talk about. That is like more interesting 3D content. But the way that they are just trying to make this friendly and accessible and not seem like a crazy new
Exactly.
paradigm that only tech geeks are going to like is pretty fascinating.
I remember this being your initial impression is that with the original announcement, even they were going after kind of the core device use cases. They wanted to kind of introduce people to VR with things that are familiar to them. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, this is just a continuation of that. So looking at photos and watching a movie, and that is really where Apple is differing in this market compared to Meta and everyone else who honestly maybe believe more and or openly believe more in this kind of like grand vision for AR and VR.
Hmm.
And so they try to sell you on their vision for the future of immersive media versus
Hmm.
Apple that doesn't isn't trying to sell you on that. They're trying to sell you on, hey, you might like looking at your photos on this device. you know,
Yeah.
you might like watching a movie on it, like FaceTiming. All things that are super relatable. So yeah, I think that's super core to what they're doing here.
Yeah, and again, like Meta never really found great integration with the Google Play Store, so you never felt like you had that easy of a leap going from like, yeah, I know how to use my Pixel phone, and now I'm going to do something similar on
Yep.
Meta. It always felt like a very different operating system. One thing I wanted to show real quick too is I got like a little poll going at the moment. Let's see if you can see that okay on the TV screen in the center. TV screen in the center. Maybe not. Maybe yes. Maybe not. Maybe yes. There we go. We'll go full screen with this for a second. So moving over into, why are Alex and Jacob talking about the Apple Vision Pro in the Unreal Engine podcast? A lot of people are wondering about, Apple Vision Pro support for Unreal Engine. I think we've talked in a previous episode about Victor Brodin's kind of official statement of like, yes, we're working on something, but also we're doing the same kind of things that anyone else can do, kind of building on the SDK. But I did want to start to query the community a little bit for how important this stuff is for them. So for our audio only listeners, I just started this poll a little while ago, but I have for the UE5 devs, how important to you is Apple Vision Pro support? And at the moment, we have 38.2% saying please as soon as possible, 17.4% saying later this year is fine, 22.2% both saying whenever, no rush, and I don't care at all. So, more than 50% are like, this year, let's get this going, with the winner so far being please as soon as possible. Above that, I've got another little thing that says, when Apple Vision Pro is fully supported for Unreal Engine 5, how important is it to you that Epic provides learning content on it? And I ask this one specifically because of the layoffs that Epic had that affected a lot of the education team. A lot of departments like the online learning portal and whatnot were pretty gutted. So, by default, we can't assume that there's going to be anything beyond some basic documentation for using the Apple Vision Pro. And of course, we'll have great YouTubers who go and show how to do stuff on it. But I did want to kind of see how much, it's going to be important to the community that there's actually first party documentation, kind of the way that Unreal Engine's done a great job explaining metahumans. I say that knowing that a lot of people get frustrated when things change from 5.1 to 5.2 to 5.3, and there isn't necessarily new videos or new updates on that. But this is the kind of thing where like I might try to show Epic at some point, like, hey, did an informal poll, just maybe this is useful, that 250 people voted, and here's kind of where they land on this issue. Because people have been saying, Alex, have you gotten the Apple Vision Pro to work on the headset? I can't talk about what I did at the actual developer day, but I can talk about what I did before the developer day, which is the same thing anyone else could do, which is to use the simulator. And the simulator, by all accounts, is a really good representation of exactly what would happen on device. I think my screen share is starting to slow down my frame rate, so I'm just going to remove it for a second. So the way I got it to work on the simulator was in Unreal Engine 5.4, which you can get from the GitHub. That has Apple Vision Pro as a supported platform. Now, it says supported platform, but it's not really out of the box. A few of the things that I had to do to make it work, and this isn't really meant to be a guide because I did a lot of janky things that didn't work. And even the thing that I did that ultimately worked hasn't worked for me lately. So this is like active development. But I enabled a plugin with the VR template that's in there called I think it's like Apple Vision Pro OpenXR support or something like that. or the OpenXR Vision OS plugin. It's something like that that you can find. So I enabled that in the project settings. I hit the checkbox to support A8. I hit the checkbox for iOS simulator support. And then I didn't package directly from the editor. I actually did like a build cook run from the command line, and eventually was able to get like an Xcode project that I was able to open up in Xcode using one of the betas of the Vision Pro simulator. And then I was able to launch that in the Vision Pro simulator and move around in what's basically the VR template. So, that's fully immersive mode. There's no mixed reality in there, but like it did make me feel like, okay, there is a workflow that's developing for getting epic content to there. And hopefully I'll be allowed to say relatively soon what happened when I took what I'd done with the simulator and tried it on the device. But rest assured, I know a lot of people are frustrated by Unity putting all of their Apple Vision Pro support behind a paywall with Unity Pro, and some people are very intimidated by getting started with Swift and Reality Kit. WebXR, I think, is an interesting place to be looking at too, since we know that's supported with Safari. But Unreal Engine, a lot of us have really cool Unreal Engine projects we'd love to show people in the Apple Vision Pro. And I hope that becomes a reasonable thing sooner rather than later.
So you mentioned there's not much you can talk about, but I've been seeing all sorts of folks talking about their impressions of the device. You're not allowed to give
Mhm.
any of that?
I think I don't want to speculate too much on like why we were told, not to talk about our experience, but I would speculate that it has something to do with the developer nature of what we were seeing. It wasn't necessarily as controlled as what the press was guided through. So I think everything that happened with the press was like very curated and very like, you can talk about this because we know exactly what you were shown. Whereas, as one would expect with a developer day, we had a full day. We had 7 hours to kind of use the device however we wanted. So I hope at some point Epic's like, yeah, or Epic. I hope Apple at some point is like, hey, yeah, go ahead, talk about this as much as you want. But I don't want to get blackballed
Sure.
from being an Apple developer yet. So I'm going to try to play it safe.
That's fair.
Um,
That's fair.
One interesting thing, so in the most recent press tour where all the press was able to try the device for the final time before it's released, um, it was the first time we were able to see pictures of people in the headset.
Yeah.
Now, some of the journalists said something very interesting, which is like, the way it looks is like, oh, we finally got to take pictures, and then like, we were able to have a little more freedom with how we talked about the device. Not true. Apparently what happened was the Apple employees were the ones taking pictures, and they did it with their own devices, and then they airdropped to you the ones that they approved of. So I know some journalists were trying to do like silly things, like they've got the headset on and their tongue is out, or they're like, blah, and like no one was able to use
They
those
just don't
pictures.
want
They weren't.
thumbnail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll notice almost all the press photos of journalists in the headsets are all very like, like almost stock photography of like, cool, I'm in the headset, it looks nice, and not much beyond that.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
Jacob, I haven't asked you yet, are you going to get an Apple Vision Pro?
I I actually did not pre-order one. Yeah, and there was a few reasons for this. First, it's an expensive device. You know,
Oh yeah, yeah,
I think,
about $4,000 after taxes and everything.
and look, I given what they've showcased thus far, I don't see a feature on the device that I could not gain from devices I currently own. Like
Yeah.
I just upgraded. I just got a new TV. You know, I can watch movies. Uh, I have a perfectly good, Apple laptop. I got my
Hmm.
iPhone, AirPod. Like sure, if you want to make an argument that you can put it all together and it becomes something special, I have plenty of VR headsets. You know, yes, I agree. Like you put those together and that becomes something interesting, and I'm definitely excited to try it. Like I'm gonna I'm definitely going to go to the Apple store and try it. Don't get me wrong. And I know a few people who have ordered it. For example, some of my coworkers, and I'm gonna be stealing it for a few hours. Um, but yeah, it just didn't make sense. I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, I would not have bought one for myself as a consumer. I did buy one on behalf of Agile Lens because we're going to use it as a developer tool. And, I think people forget that the first version of every Apple product, they would never use the term developer kit or anything like that. But it is that, it's always a thing with a lot of potential that doesn't have an app ecosystem yet, that hasn't had the stamp that developers put on all this stuff by building really cool apps. And it's something people are figuring out. Like the Apple Watch, I think, has evolved so much from what it was
Yep.
during the first version of it to what it is now. And I think we're going to see something similar happen here. So a lot of people, I'm telling them, like, yeah, wait until there's a $1,200 version or something like that, like something that's more comparable to a phone. And kind of like, the way a lot of people say, don't buy a video game on day one because you're paying the most for the least stable version of that experience, because it's going to go on sale and it's going to have patches and all that. Similar kind of thing with hardware like this. Like by the time you get to Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4, it'll be cheaper, it'll be more integrated into the other Apple ecosystem products. It's going to have a better sense of what it is, especially because there's going to be more apps for it.
Yep.
So I wouldn't begrudge anyone who's like, yeah, I'm not ready to buy this yet.
Yeah, the other thing that was honestly a bit of a nail in the coffin for me is just the battery life.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I'm very bad about charging devices in general. Like I'm just not good on
I
keeping on top of it. So like my Apple Watch constantly is out of battery and that has a full day of battery life, and I forget
yeah.
to charge it. Like a lot of the VR, like both my Quests are out of battery, right? Because I just forget to charge them. Um, so like I can't imagine spending that much money on it, just knowing about myself that it's probably just going to sit dead for a long, a long time until I want to watch something, and then I have to like plug it into a wall and I look ridiculous or whatever, right? And once again, I'd probably rather just watch a movie on my TV. So, like, yeah, that was also a bit of a deal killer. I was surprised that did not get more negative coverage.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, you get a lot of people talking about the weight lately. Again, I'll talk about how I felt about the weight when I'm perfectly clear that I'm allowed to. But battery concern also something for me. I actually did buy an extra battery. As you're
yeah,
checking out, it asks you for any accessories you want. It was $200 for an extra full battery, and I figured for our purposes that'll be worth it, whether we're giving demos
yeah,
or just developing. Also, when you have it plugged into a computer, it's running off the charge of the MacBook or whatever. So that's pretty straightforward. Um, I also just want to mention, by the way, huge props to Apple for making the checkout process super easy. Like
yeah,
I assumed the reason why it only took me a minute and a half to go from like opening up the app right at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to checking out 2.5 minutes later was because, oh no, there's no demand for it. When in fact, it sounds like not only did they sell out the initial like 80,000 units they had, but they sold out for the next like couple batches that are coming in. So it's
yeah,
something like 150,000 units that have sold. And so considering that, the fact that the Apple App Store app remained very stable and didn't give me any trouble at all,
yeah.
that's kind of unprecedented. I've never experienced that with anything from concert tickets to a device that goes
Yeah.
on sale.
But this is like
The Steam
nothing
Deck.
compared to an
Yeah,
iPhone, release, right? Like,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, you
Yeah.
have to imagine they've dealt with this a few times, and I was just impressed to hear people's stories of, you know, it got guiding you through the face measuring, and
Yeah.
just very clever and very thought out. And this is, I think, the biggest thing is that, yeah, you could call it a dev kit if you kind of want to explain who will probably benefit the most from it. Like, I do think
Hmm.
developers. I asked Alex, like, "Hey, do you think I should get one?" And he
Right.
said, "If you plan on developing on it, yes, absolutely. If not, I don't know." And yeah, I do think developers will get the most out of it. But the experience is straight for the consumer, right? Like for everyone. And that video we just watched is not for developers. Like developers,
No.
are gonna break everything. They're going to immediately get in there and try to mess with things. Okay, how far can I tap? Like that's not for them. So that I think that's the biggest difference in approach that someone like Apple takes is if they're going to try and convince people and the market that this is the next big consumer device, which is what they do, they're taking what seems like a much more reasonable approach, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think Apple's going about this in a really smart way. And I say that not as someone who, has been in XR for over 10 years now and very easily could have been like, they're not doing any cool things that no one else has done in XR before, because what they're doing is so centered around what Tim Cook said on launch day, which is we're so excited to show people spatial computing for the first time. And a lot of us had an initial reaction to that, like, there's been spatial computing for years now. But he really means, like, we want this to be the first device that a lot of people try this out on.
Yeah,
And we want it to be a really smooth experience that they, get excited about. So again, I think what they're doing is really smart.
yeah,
So,
and
good job, Apple. I hope, and this is absolutely like a rising tide that raises all boats sort of
right,
situation,
exactly.
because just by Apple taking this seriously and being in the game, it makes anyone else, Meta, Vario, whoever, everyone else kind of like wake up and say like, oh man, we really got to get our shit together and make sure that we can compete properly with Apple, because they're the giant behemoth elephant in the room.
Yeah, yeah. I think this will overall be very good for the ecosystem.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what sort of content we get. Yeah, I mean, it's I'm bummed, honestly. Like, I really did want to get one, but I feel like I made a sound decision for now.
Yeah, yeah, you shouldn't worry about it. And of course, yeah, if your colleagues won't let you use theirs, you can come over to my office
Oh,
anytime and use mine.
thank you, Al.
We'll try to be pretty generous. And I am curious how, because obviously I got a medium device that was like sized for whatever it picked up from my face shape. And I am curious
Yeah.
how many people will put it on and be like, something just looks off to
Oh,
me
actually,
because of
this is
the
this is a
measurement.
question I had, and maybe you're not able to answer this, but
Mm.
um, what happens if you put someone else's device on? Do their eyes show up on your face,
I
or
think
like?
they said, yeah, so I can't comment on this directly, but I thought Apple said something publicly about how like it was going to be locked to just you, and they
Uh,
implied something like if you were going to put on someone else's device, you would just get like a like a error or like a big X or
this is like the
something.
retina
But
scanning stuff, right? Yeah. Okay.
yeah, something like that. But it's like they have to know that people want to demo this and try it out. Like I know my company is going to have at least a couple demos on this that we're going to want to bring to trade shows and
Yeah.
like let people look at the experience in. And there has to be a way to make sure that it's not going to get
Yeah.
angry every time someone else puts the headset on. But I understand Apple wanting to control this and make sure that people are having a good experience, and they know, I'm sure, that it's going to reflect poorly on them if someone with a large head puts on a small device and it feels way too tight and the IPD is wrong,
Yeah.
and like that's going to make them feel like Apple messed up, not that they were, wearing the wrong device.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, they have to be able to do, yeah, to do demos. I mean, otherwise, like, how are you
Yeah.
going to convince your friend to buy one?
Yeah. Our client for the Four Seasons project, he has one of these apps that will read your IPD, and every time someone's about to put the headset on, he'll do that really quick, get someone's IPD, set it up in the MetaQuest Pro, and make sure that they then are seeing the correct eye distance once they're in
Yeah.
device.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
also
nice.
had some other questions about the eye thing, which maybe you can't answer, but like, so it's an avatar of some sort. They've said
A persona.
persona, right? So it's like some AI 3D scan something or another, right? But what happens if, for like example, like the headset tilts? Like, is it tracking your face well enough to like move? Like, these are questions I have, because that seems like the bare bottom, like, meme worthy content that would come out of this. It's like, as
Mm.
soon as people throw this on their face and their eyeballs are like twisted, or like, that's gonna immediately you know cause issues. So I have so
Or
many
the
questions
simple
about
version,
that
like
feature.
like Sony just revealed a new headset at CES, and one of the cool things that Windows Mixed Reality was doing a while ago is being able to flip it up. And for headsets
Yeah.
that don't flip up, a lot of times developers will like just kind of bring it up over their forehead. So like, yeah, what happens to the lenticular screen when it just can't see your eyes? It's a good
Yeah.
question.
It just it's I mean, the rumor was that they didn't have the feature ready
Mm.
at the launch, and that seems like a very difficult feature to ship in a few months. Now,
Yeah.
I'm sure it was obviously well in progress, but I wonder if it was like, well, partially, I wonder if they needed to like get people to scan more their face more. Like, with this like launch, they probably just collected a few. well, I guess 100,000 people's faces as part of the selling process. Like, I'm wondering if this is like going to be some last minute scramble, some like later software update. Like, you're going to get the device day one, it's going to have a big software update, and they're going to improve. I have a lot of doubts about the face, the eyes in the headset. That just seems ripe for yeah, ripe for destruction.
Parody.
Yeah.
Yeah, creepiness. By the way, did you see the new invention from one of the Disney inventors, this hollow tile floor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got that pulled up. Let me show that real quick for anyone who's
This was
watching
all over the
our
place this
stream.
week. It
Yeah.
was cool to see though.
So yeah, Jacob, what did you hear about this?
Well, I'm very intrigued by how it could work, but I saw it all over the place. There's been so many attempts at this sort of thing. Uh, movement for AR VR, and definitely this is the coolest, if I'm being perfectly honest. But like, I have so many questions. The first one being, what's underneath that? Right?
Right.
Because he's in like a boxing ring, right? So he could have like 3 feet of like of mechanical nonsense below this just to make these
Mm.
tiles work. Um, my assumption is that the tiles are shifting under him and like reconfiguring or something, or
The thing that I'm most
no.
concerned about is this seems great when you are in motion, but if you then plant your feet and stop, I feel like you're still going to drift a little bit. And that seems like the kind of thing that could make someone feel really sick in
Yeah.
VR. I don't know.
So you can kind of see it. It's like going in grids, and man, I it's really hard to see what it's doing. Like, this could 100% be a troll, and we would never
Sure.
know. Uh,
Come on, Disney. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this though like harkens back to the days of VR treadmills and all
Hmm.
the nonsense that
The
came out.
Virtuix and all that.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
what?
but again, if you're using something like Unreal Engine and you've got a hyper photorealistic scene, anything that starts to be more of an immersion multiplier is pretty great. Like I was joking, saying like, "Ah, I think it's time to convert the 5,000 square foot holodeck in Austin to something that's like 50 square feet." Because if this does get to a point where you don't need as much physical space because this feels just like walking around a real space, that's pretty exciting. But
Yeah, but it
we'll
also
see
probably
if it
cost
actually
half a
gets
million
there.
dollars to build, like, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's typically where these things go, right? Like, they're I remember way before the VR, era, they had the big hamster balls,
Right.
and it's like, yeah, it works, but, like, who's putting a hamster ball that's the size of a warehouse, anywhere near their home or near an off like, that's really the tends to be the issue with those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But good for that guy. He
Um,
seemed very nice.
Yeah, he seems like a super cool inventor who has one of the most awesome jobs in the world, just like inventing things for Disney theme
100%.
parks. It's like an Imagineer, but like another couple levels higher because it doesn't even need to be for a specific ride. He can just be like
Yeah.
coming up with super cool
He
ideas.
just he's has
Yeah,
tenure, it's like
yeah, yeah. Seems like he can stay there as long as he wants and just keep making cool stuff. Um, One thing I wanted to mention too, and I forgive me if I already mentioned this on a previous podcast, I was playing a little more of Asgard's Wrath 2 over the holiday, and what a beautiful looking standalone VR experience made in Unreal Engine. Putting this out there, I think it would be a really cool guest for us to talk to anyone on the development team who worked on
Yeah.
that project, just to understand how they made it look so good on a standalone headset. That would be awesome. And I want to know what version of Unreal they're using, and if all the lighting is baked, and are they in deferred rendering or forward, and all that kind of stuff, because it's at a level of fidelity that I've really only seen maybe with like Red Matter. But of course we know Red Matter and Red Matter 2 are using a heavily modified version of Unreal Engine, and I'm curious if that's the case here as well.
Yeah, I've been hearing such great things about that game. I haven't played it yet. I haven't played it
Yeah.
yet.
Also, I don't think, yeah, we this happened while we were off. Did you see that the praydog UEVR mod came out over the
Yeah.
holidays? Yeah.
So I need to try that as well. I got like my list uh already, cuz yeah, that I want to try like some solid like well, what's like what's the classics that I can load up in here? It's all Unreal Engine games, right? So like,
Yeah, I mean, like Hogwarts Legacy is going to look
yeah, oh,
awesome flying around
that's
a
a good one.
magical kingdom.
Like you like wave your wand in Hogwarts Legacy? Is that like,
Yeah, well, so one thing that's kind of interesting, an ongoing debate about using this. Let's see if I can show the TV again. This is just the GitHub for it. Is that third person versus first person? Because
uh,
there's a lot of ways you can modify a game to be from third person to first person, and it's probably going to look a little more natural. I was doing this a lot back in like July with Jedi Survivor, and like how cool it felt to be swinging a lightsaber around, being much closer to it. But third person, a tricky thing is like the way you naturally move a camera in third person is going to potentially make you feel kind of sick. So finding that balance between like, oh my God, this is amazing, I'm immersed in this world from this video game I love, and making sure that the control scheme isn't a complete and utter mismatch for what you're doing is tricky. I had a great time playing It Takes Two with my kids, with one of us in VR, and we traded back and forth, and one of us just using a regular controller, all from the same computer. That was really cool. So split screen things can work really well with this. But the other thing too is for all of our friends out there who are developing things in Unreal Engine, like go back and find some of your old projects, because the idea is that it can be an Unreal Engine thing you made that was not made for VR, and now it will run in VR. So I went and I looked at some of the very first Unreal Engine projects I ever made back in like 2016, 2017, and ran this and was like, oh my God, VR version of
cool.
that now. So that's really cool. I love the fact that this kind of breathes new life into older projects.
Yeah, this is definitely something I have to try out. I wonder if you
Yeah.
could play like, can you jump into like Borderlands? Because that's an Unreal Engine game too, right?
Is Borderlands VR or Unreal Engine?
This is a great question.
On a similar note, it's probably worth mentioning that
Yeah,
a
Unreal
friend
Engine
of
3. Sorry. I got excited there.
Unreal Engine 3, yeah. Then I don't think it will work. I think this is only for Unreal Engine 4
Ah,
and Unreal Engine 5. But I want to find uh, Amanda Watson, who invented Airlink and has helped us out with the work that we've been doing at Four Seasons. What is the GitHub? It's also in the same vein as this UEVR injector. She took Citra, which is a example of, man, I just got to find the actual link now. She took Citra, which is a very popular Nintendo 3DS mod, and of course, the Nintendo 3DS had like a flat screen that moved back and forth. Amanda, just trying to find your GitHub. And she took it and made a standalone version of it that works on Quest. So pretty cool. Now, I found when I installed it that out of the box, it wasn't working fantastic. I needed to go and mess with a bunch of the settings, but I tried Metal Gear Solid 3 and Mario Kart and Zelda
very cool.
and a bunch of these games that I haven't played in a very long time, since playing with a 3DS, and they look great. You can like resize the screen, make it much, much bigger. So I thought that was also a really cool new port of something to VR. Clearly not Unreal Engine. I am sure that none of the games made for 3DS were made in Unreal Engine, but still another cool way of bringing older games to life. Although I think it's relevant to our Apple Vision Pro conversation, because so much of what I think we're finding between Apple Vision Pro, the UEVR praydog mod, and this now with Citra VR is the fact that people are interested in 3D content that isn't necessarily completely immersive. Everyone thought that 3D TVs were a gimmick, that there wasn't anything really of value to them. But to just start to be like, you know what, it's okay to have VR 180 or like a frame that has 3D content, but there's still other things around you that are not in frames. There seems to be value in that. So it's kind of fascinating to see this resurgence in interest in, I want to say, limited 3D content rather than fully immersive VR
Yeah,
content.
I mean, if you gave me the Apple Vision with multitasking in Mac OS
Mm-hmm.
with a battery life that was similar to a MacBook,
Yeah.
that would be a killer device, right? Like,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and one thing they showed in the video that we didn't comment on is how easy it is to take whatever you're doing on like a MacBook Pro and just kind of like bloop, now you're putting it in space and dragging it around. And similarly, like we haven't seen this yet, but I have to imagine it's going to be a very short amount of time before you can take literally any app on your iPhone and kind of drag it up, like flick it up or something, and now it'll be in your space and it's immersive and you can move it around and resize it and all that kind of stuff. So, easiest example to imagine of that is photos. Like, I want this photo, this photo, this photo, and you collage them around
Yeah.
yourself. But also, even just like, okay, I'm going to give a presentation and I'm going to practice some public speaking and I'm going to pull up this notes document and these slides or whatever. And I'm just going to have those things around me as I talk. That's kind of fascinating. Then, of course, I'm sure at some point we'll see someone like actually give a talk while wearing an Apple Vision Pro where they're referencing all their notes and everything from inside the device. And that'll probably look pretty creepy and weird, but
Yeah.
we're going to see that. We're going to see the glass holes equivalent of people walking around in their Apple Vision Pros, ordering coffee or speaking to their airline hostess. And some people might think it looks really cool, and some people are going to be like, "That guy's an asshole." Whatever.
Yeah.
That's always what happens with like these rich people toys.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really so intrigued what's gonna happen. I gotta say, it's like it,
Yeah.
it
We're
could go
definitely going
either
to
way.
have another episode probably soon where it's like, okay, I have the device, we've both tried it, I've done some dev work, whatever, and then we can comment on like the actual lived experience of this thing instead of just the hype and the things that we are allowed to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Let's talk briefly about the latest lawsuit
Yeah,
situation. So one of the more ridiculous ones I know we both were responding to, Jacob, was Apple being told basically like, hey, you need to let people buy things outside of the app, and you can't tell people that like this needs to be the cheapest place for it. But Jacob, go ahead and tell our audience what Apple is doing to kind of skirt this fairly reasonable request that you should be able to like click a link in an app and go to a store somewhere else and buy something.
yeah. So Apple is getting around the court order that mandates that developers should be allowed to do this by putting in the terms and conditions for these external links that developers still have to pay Apple 27% of revenue generated from those links.
A 3% discount. How generous.
Yeah. So like even if Apple doesn't like process the payment, right? They do nothing in this, right? They are still going to say, "Hey, if you want to redeem that purchase in the application, you got to pay." And that is just wild to me.
Yeah. Like the analogy I think about is like Apple treating the device as something that like you should feel so honored to be on for people. And it's kind of like a venue. Like there's some really hot club. But then the club is hot and popular because there's amazing DJs or bands there. And yet every time someone's like, "Oh, hey, I think I'd be a great DJ or band for that club," and you're contributing to the reputation of it, the owners are like, "Okay, great. We're gonna pay you like 3% or whatever of the people who are coming in, or let's be reasonable,
Yeah.
I guess, to use the 30% thing. We're gonna pay you 70% of what happens when you come in here." And you're like, "Oh, okay, well, what if we want to like sell some merch like outside the venue or whatever?" It's like, well, you have to pay us for that as well, and these kind of things that just wouldn't happen in the real
Yeah,
world. And the analogy that's very easy to think of is like credit cards. Credit
yep.
cards take like 1.5%, 2%, 3% of a transaction. And that seems pretty
Well,
reasonable.
that's
So
where
I
the
don't
number
know how
comes
we ended
from,
up with
right?
this
So like
30%
the
model. Yeah.
27% is to account for what's probably most payment processors terms anywhere from 1 to 3%, right? So like
Yeah.
most payment processors, they're charging you just a small amount. I mean, it's still a lot if we're being honest. Um, they, how they get away with it when it's, 2024 and you don't pay to like send bits over the wire, between,
Right.
like you do pay. That's maybe an exaggeration. Someone would call me out on that, but not that much. So, like, really, this was just the 27 versus 30% must have just been them wanting to avoid further lawsuits by saying that they're discriminating against external payment processors by making it so that it costs more. As long as it costs the same, I think they assume they won't get in trouble.
Yeah. Yep. And then there was the Google lawsuit, which I think a lot of people were surprised to see that Epic kind of won every one of these counts, but it was kind of a weird one because it seemed to be specifically about all the shady things that Google was doing to try to hide what they were doing. Like there were all these mandates about like how they need to delete all their emails and how they were kind of like gloating about all the terrible things they were doing to developers. And it was like in so many ways similar to the Apple situation, but like completely disorganized. And it seems like the result of this might be some kind of like special exception for Fortnite and Epic where they don't have to pay a huge transaction fee the same way like Spotify and some of these other apps don't need to. But it doesn't necessarily seem like it's going to have the same ripple effect out of the box to a lot of other developers in the Google app ecosystem.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, to be clear, I even in like Fortnite's case, like if you bought V Bucks on PC, I want to say that you could still utilize them on your iPhone. You just couldn't purchase them there. That's
Hmm.
and I think that's true. Um, so like, yeah, it's just a crazy situation. It it seems fairly obvious that it's an unfair practice, and it's a shame that they're getting so much pushback. Um, so yeah, I think this is probably a nail in the coffin for that particular lawsuit. I saw that there were reports that Supreme Court had denied it. I can't imagine the Supreme Court taking that case. Um, so yeah, and that's all she wrote, which is pretty sad.
Yeah, for now. Let's talk a little bit about some things coming up. Just for funsies, let's make a couple predictions. Jacob, when do you think Unreal Engine 5.4 will drop? Which, of course, is what you would see right now if you were to download the main GitHub branch of Unreal. When do you think that will actually get a release?
That will be GDC. That's my
You
in
think
March.
GDC?
Yep,
Yeah,
that would be my guess.
makes sense. Yeah. Do
Q1,
you
mid to late Q1. I think it checks out.
Yeah. So the two major wow moments of GDC in 2023 were probably the Electric Dream sample with the Rivian driving through this huge procedurally generated environment, and then also the live demonstration of MetaHuman Animator. Do you think they're going to top that? Do you think we've got anything on the horizon that would be kind of in those
If
ballparks?
I were to guess what they would announce this year, given the situation they're in, I would bet that they lean in as heavy as they can into AI focused use cases in order to bubble
Hmm.
up their valuation. Um, Given that they've expressed they're in financial trouble, they kind of need good press, probably.
Mm.
So I would guess they would probably double down on some of the like deformation and like face capture, like motion capture. Yeah, I bet they just double down on a lot of that stuff this year to make sure that they walk out of something like GDC looking like a company that is a leader in AI for media entertainment. That would be my guess. And to be clear, you can look in the engine and see what they're shipping. I haven't. Maybe you have, Alex.
Yeah, I hear you. um a couple things coming up in terms of events, or yeah, like I have some idea. I'm not gonna reveal any of my potential insider knowledge. Oh, by the way, Fortnite, anything exciting with Fortnite that you've noticed the past couple months? I always like to do a quick little
Yeah, a little
chicken
Fortnite
Fortnite check-in.
update. Nothing big thus far. I mean, we kind of reached the end of the OG Fortnite era, and we're back to. Well,
Mm-hmm.
actually, what I should say is probably since we've spoken, they've revamped a lot about the game. There was a solid like month or two where everyone was kind of freaking out because some of the gameplay started feeling more like a Call of Duty, where it was like you had attachments for guns and there was a little bit that kind of pushed it more towards war zones, if I'm being honest. Um, but I think most of that has blown over and people are pretty happy with it. I'm definitely pretty happy with it. I think it's been pretty fun overall. So that's the Fortnite update.
Cool. That sounds great. Yeah, my kids and I have been having a lot of fun with Lego Fortnite. But we get frustrated that you can build these great little like rocket cars that fly around, but there's no steering wheel. There's no way to like really guide exactly where they're going to go. So you're kind of at the mercy of your rockets. So, my one little request for Lego Fortnite right now would be allow you to have the little switches that activate things, but have them be kind of within the range of the rockets that are nearby them. So in lieu of a steering wheel, I'd like to be able to the ability to like turn on rear thrusters and then turn on left
Yeah.
thrusters and then turn on right thrusters and then have a little bit more control over that super cool kit of parts of movement.
Yeah. There, I will say, in general, I've been seeing a lot more Unreal Engine games pop up in game stores and everything else. One game that I poked at a little bit, um, well, actually, two games recently that I played a little bit were both Unreal Engine. By maybe by coincidence, or maybe I'm just attracted to the visual style, and I see a trailer, and I something subconscious tells me. But the game Hell Let Loose is like a World War II, like multi or massive multiplayer game. I would say, does it look the best as an Unreal Engine game? Probably not, but it is very impressive that they built a massive multiplayer game in Unreal Engine. So good
Mm-hmm.
for those people. And I've played only a little bit of it, but I've heard from friends that it's an incredible game. Another one is the finals, which I think is actually a major contender for like one of the best FPS games right now. And that's
Mm-hmm.
another category that Unreal Engine historically, like competitive first person shooters have not been in the wheelhouse of Unreal Engine. So very cool to see some new categories popping up, seeing more games on the store made with Unreal. Like that hasn't always been the case. So I'm excited to see more of that.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, do you have any theories on places, just back in the prediction mode, of places we might see Unreal Fest this year? I heard a little bit of a rumor that maybe Unreal Fest USA might not be in New Orleans this year. That would be a little bit sad. But even for like Unreal Fest Asia or Gold Coast or whatever, can you imagine anywhere else that would be a cool place to have Unreal
Well,
Fest?
first of all, I just want to put out there that I full on protest the movement of Unreal Fest from New Orleans because I genuinely look forward to Unreal Fest, at least in part, like let's say 30% in part because you go to New Orleans, you have amazing food all week. Always a good time. The music, like, I don't want it to move. I'm good with where it's at. I do enough convention centers and random cities, and most of them are just surrounded by total barren nonsense. And you just go from your hotel to the convention center and back, and that's it. So I can't imagine. Now, if I had to choose somewhere for it to be relocated, I would obviously choose New York because New York's a great city. Or
Big
alternatively,
habits.
somewhere nice and warm. Um, Like, if you wanted to put this in Miami, wouldn't be that upset, to be honest.
Sure.
But I'd really like it to stay in New Orleans.
That would be cool. I know a lot of people were also frustrated this past year because Unreal Fest was very, very close to, was this year or last year? Maybe it was last year. And by last year I mean 2022. But there was, oh man, my camera. There was Apple Vision. Oh my God, I'm just glitching right now.
This
There
is a pretty
was.
common occurrence on this podcast. For those who
I'm
watch the
breaking.
YouTube video, is when Alex
Yeah,
turns into the little pulsating blob when his camera dies.
hilarious. Yeah. We'll just let it happen. No need to cut this out, Alan. This is real behind the scenes stuff. I'm going to try to kill my VCam here. There was a year when Autodesk University was happening very, very close to Unreal Fest. I think this was 2022. And then it was like 2 weeks later that Unreal Fest happened. So it was like just enough time where like no one was really going to stay. Whereas, there would have been something kind of interesting about actually being able to do both events. So I'm sure that would have been completely exhausting. Anytime I travel, I'm always looking for like, how can I bundle multiple things together to make it the most
Yeah.
valuable trip possible?
But man, I'm bummed that Unreal Fest would move. Now, in terms of Asia, that's a good question. I've heard that Gold Coast in Australia will happen again.
Cool.
but maybe we'll get something in Japan. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be a good excuse to go to Japan, but I as a first
I think
trip, that
they
might be, not quite as beneficial.
so they actually did Unreal Fest in Tokyo last year.
Oh, did they?
They did. It was May 22nd to May 28th.
Oh, man. I missed out.
Oh, the website's actually really cool. Hold on, let me just show this. There's something very like Shinjuku about this whole thing. Load. There it is. Yeah, look at this thing. Show overlay.
Whoa, that's a cool one. It got, like, some cyberpunk vibes to it.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty cool. I guess they didn't speak a whole lot of English there, so it probably wouldn't have been too productive for me.
Yeah, but it looks amazing. Well, I mean, they must have had international speakers, but maybe the whole thing was in Japanese. I don't
Who
know.
knows?
But that's really
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
that's sweet.
I mean, I did the Korea thing where, I had a translator the whole time, and that was not as complicated or difficult as I thought. So
Yeah.
by all means, if Epic or anyone else wants to send me to Tokyo
Oh, yeah, you'll
and give
take
me a
it?
translator the whole time, I will do it. I promise I'll do it.
Alright. Well, man,
So I guess let's wrap up with a few events coming
yeah.
up. And I'll mention briefly that the other day there was a very cool event at the Microsoft Garage in New York City, sponsored by Leia, who makes the LumePad, and they were showing some really beautiful Unreal Engine content on the LumePad. They were also advertising the fact that they are going to be at the MIT Reality Hack, and they have a new version of their Unreal Engine plugin coming soon. LumePad, by the way, is like a 3D screen. So again, like a frame, like a 3D TV that doesn't require glasses. And they have a new version of their Unreal plugin coming that will let you see the live content in the editor that you are doing live in your Unreal Engine editor in 3D, which is kind of cool. Looking Glass also has a similar plugin, so it's a really cool way to develop live or just show people, stuff in the moment as you're messing around and changing things in kind of like a virtual production environment. So
Yeah, cool.
MIT Reality Hack, of course, is also a really exciting place for people to get together. Sorry, Jacob, what were you going to say?
No, I was just backing you up here.
Yeah. Jacob, have you ever been to the MIT Reality Hack?
Well, that's where Alex and I met, actually,
That's right.
way back in the day. I haven't been, since that first time, but it was an amazing event. It was cut off. My kind of, attendance was cut off by COVID, and I haven't made it part of my, scheduled rotation of conferences, but it is an awesome event. So I do really recommend, especially if you're just getting into XR and you want a chance to learn a few things, meet up with some people, like amazing opportunity.
It's a shame that it's not happening a couple weeks later because they usually have really good partners. And maybe I wonder if this will happen next year, but it would have been amazing if Apple actually was there and had some Vision Pros available for people to
Yeah.
hack with. Because one thing that makes the MIT Reality Hack very different from, say, like Global Game Jam is, the partner support. So you will often have, Magic Leap and HoloLens and Vario and Tesla suits and like all these things that are there from a hardware perspective, along with actual devs at the companies who are going to help you integrate using their technology into their software. The year Jacob and I were there, I think also had like representatives with Microsoft and Azure Connects and things like that. If you want to do something with volumetric data or the motion capture data from there, you also get people like Max from Normcore, who makes like a really cool Unreal Engine multiplayer plugin. So you get developers and hardware manufacturers and all these people who are there to help you over this weekend sprint to make something really, really cool. So I think the amount that people learn over the MIT Reality Hack is like 700% what you could learn in that same amount of time by yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's an awesome event.
Yeah. Did you make
What's next
something in
after that?
Unreal Engine? I'm trying to remember what you built that
Oh,
year.
no, I was an instructor that year
That's
for
right.
Unreal,
Yeah, that's right.
and
That's
no
right.
one was using Unreal, so I didn't do a whole lot, if I'm being
Yes, you
honest.
and Steve Bauer had the same problem. Yeah, you were both
Yeah.
Unreal Engine instructors, and then there was like not enough people to actually help out. And Steve Bowler, and I was actually trying to get my team to use Unreal Engine, and they're like, we just feel more comfortable in Unity. So I ended up in Unity that year, but
Yeah.
alas.
Damn Unity.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So just to wrap up, MIT Reality Hack coming out soon. Hope people go check that out. And then I think that's it on my list. I don't know if there's anything else major coming up. So thank you, everyone. Welcome back to 2024. Jacob and I are happy to be here with you all and see all the cool things that are going to happen this year with devices and hardware and software and games and Unreal Engine. And we look forward to chatting again soon.
Yeah. See you another time.
See you next time. Cheers.